I'm not selling the farm. Hey, welcome to The Whole Truth, where I am taking you through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation without skipping anything. And the last video, I think, really demonstrated that well. Anyways, today is Deuteronomy chapter 26, and we're going to do 15 verses of chapter 26, and it deals with tithing. And I'll explain what I was saying in the beginning after we read through the text together. So pause the video if you need to. Go grab your Bible or open it up on the split screen there in your phone or your device that you're watching this on, and read along with me from Deuteronomy chapter 26, and we'll start in verse 1. Deuteronomy 26 and verse 1. And it shall be, when you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take some of the first of all the produce of the ground, which you shall bring from your land that the Lord your God is giving you, and put it in a basket, and go to the place where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. And you shall go to the one who is priest in those days, and say to him, I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come to the country which the Lord swore to our fathers to give us. Then the priest shall take the basket out of your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord your God. And you shall answer and say before the Lord your God, my father was a Syrian about to perish, and he went down to Egypt and dwelt there, few in number, and there became a nation, great, mighty, and populous. But the Egyptians mistreated us and afflicted us and laid hard bondage on us. And then we cried out to the Lord God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our voice and looked on our affliction and our labor and our oppression. And so the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm, with great terror, with signs and wonders. He has brought us to this place and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now behold, I have brought the first fruits of the land, which you, the Lord, have given me. And then you shall set it before the Lord your God and worship before the Lord your God. You shall rejoice in every good thing which the Lord your God has given you and your house, you and the Levite and the stranger who is among you. And when you have finished laying aside all the tithe of your increase in the third year, the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, so that they may eat within your gates and be filled, then you shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the holy tithe from my house. I also have given them to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all your commandments, which you commanded me. I have not transgressed your commandments, nor have I forgotten them. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning, nor have I removed any of it for an unclean use, nor given any of it for the dead. I have obeyed the voice of the Lord my God, and have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look down from your holy habitation from heaven and bless your people Israel and the land which you have given us, just as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, so we have 15 verses, and those verses are all about tithing. These verses are about tithing. For some, bring up this like feeling of like, here we go again. It's always about, always about giving. This guy came into church one time. He came into my church, and he looked at me, and I went to introduce myself, and I said, what's your name? I asked him what his name was, and he said, I'm not going to sell the farm. And I was like, okay. And his wife stepped in and gave her name, and I was like, all right, well, good to meet you. And then he said it again, I'm not going to sell the farm. And she stepped in and she said, what he means is that, he is used to the idea that when you go to church, the church wants you to give, that you have to give everything that you have. So he's going to, he has to sell the farm and give everything that he has to the church. And I just kind of laughed it off, but it's telling that that's the way some people feel is like if you come to church, all they want you to just give everything that you have to them so that then they have it. And certainly we've seen that. We've seen televangelists and those who are, on TV preaching, saying these terrible things like, send us this amount of money and we'll send you a prayer cloth that we've blessed, or we'll send you this water that we've blessed, or, send us some amount of money so that, we can do this or do that. And then we watch as these, preachers on TV are, buying private jets. I went to a jet show here recently, and the cheapest jet that was there, private jet that was there, was $8 million. And the guy selling them was saying that one was a deal. The highest, the most expensive one there was $28 million. And you have these television pastors who are going and buying these private jets, and they're justifying going and buying a private jet, and they're doing that on the backs of other people. So certainly there has been some misuse of money among ministers that has then given us a bad name. I'm not going to take that away. That certainly has happened. However, just because someone else did something wrong doesn't mean that you should do something wrong. God told his people Israel that he wanted them to tithe. The reason that they were supposed to tithe, if you just read along with me as I read through that whole thing, was simply this: God heard their cry, took them out of Egypt. God has delivered them. So what does God expect from them? God expects them to give him their first fruits. The first crop that comes up, they're supposed to give it to the Lord. And the crop from the third year, they're supposed to give it to the Lord. That way the fatherless can have it, and the widow can have it, and the stranger can have it. It can be used and distributed the way that the priest and the Levites and those in the temple would see fit, not to mention the priest and the Levites would be taken care of as well. The idea is simply this: God took care of them. God delivered them. Now they have a responsibility, and that responsibility is to tithe. That's what they're supposed to do. Now, what about you and I? Do we have to tithe? Are we under obligation to tithe? Am I saying that, well, because God has done so much for us that we absolutely have to tithe? Well, no. Paul clears this up for us in the New Testament as he says, "Let a man give as he purposes in his own heart." A tithe is a tenth. 10%. You get 100 of something, give 10 of those to the Lord. I would point out to you that God asked for far less than your government asks for in taxes. Your government makes you pay, sometimes I owned a business, sometimes upwards of more than 30%. So you make $100, you have to give $30 in taxes. The Lord said if you make $100, you give 10 of those dollars to the Lord. That's a tithe. Are we under the tithe in the New Testament era? And the answer is no, we're not under the tithe. We do not have to give a tenth. But I think a tenth is a great idea. Why not give a tenth? Why should you not want to give God a tenth? As a matter of fact, could you or would you consider giving him even more than that? Regardless of what some other person might have done wrong, we're talking about giving back to God. And Paul said it this way: let a man give as he purposes in his own heart. He also said this, that the Lord loves a cheerful giver, that you ought to give cheerfully, and you ought to give out of the goodness of your heart. That's the reason you ought to give. Not because you feel obligated, or not because somebody's browbeat you over it, but simply because you love the Lord and you want to give back to his purposes. You want to give back to his house. That's the reason that you ought to give. Well, so that means that we ought to tithe. When we tithe, we're saying something. Now, you just heard me say we ought to tithe. I think we ought to tithe. Are we under the law that we have to tithe? No, but I think we ought to. I think that we should want to. I think that we should want to give back to the Lord. And so I think it's a good encouragement for us to do that. And when we do it, we're making some statements. We kind of saw these here as we saw that the person who gives the tithe is supposed to go and, say these things to the priest, and then the priest takes them and lays them before the altar. And the person kind of goes over this thing that, we were Syrians, we were in the land, and we were few in number, but the Lord grew us into a mighty nation, and we were mistreated and oppressed, and the Lord took care of us, and the Lord delivered us. And so now the Lord has delivered us and brought us into this land flowing with milk and honey. The Lord has provided for us. This is what came from the Lord. So here we go. The first reason that I would give you that we're supposed to tithe is because God is the one who provided for us to begin with. Everything that you have because God gave it to you. If you made $100, you made $100 because God gave you that. Every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights, the Father above. So you have to understand He's the one who's already provided for you. You're also saying something else when you tithe. When you tithe, what you are saying is, God, I trust you. Because the tithe is the first. They're given the first fruits as a tithe. That means the first crop that comes up. We're trusting by giving God the first part of the crop that comes up. We're trusting that more is going to come. I've got a strawberry patch out back of my house in our garden. I've got a little strawberry patch going on, and we go out back and we pick the strawberries. Now, we don't really give of our strawberries. We don't have a way to give those to the Lord. Maybe I should work that out and figure out some way. But I can tell you that that's come up in patches. It's come up in spurts. We'll go out there and there's a whole bunch of red strawberries, and we pick all those red strawberries, and we have a nice little bowl of red strawberries. I'll get like a big Tupperware bowl and take it out there, and we'll fill it up with all those red strawberries, and we'll bring them in the house and wash them off. And we go out the next day and we don't really see much. Maybe there's some little green ones or whatever, but 2 days or 3 days later, guess what? We'll get just as big of a bowl again, and we'll pick all of those and we bring those in the house and we wash them and whatever. We go out the next day and the next day, and 2 or 3 days later, guess what we'll find? We'll get a whole nother big bowl. We've done that probably 10 times now. When the Israelite was giving God the first fruits, what's he saying? I'm trusting God that there's going to be another, that there's going to be more. That's what you're doing when you give to the Lord. You're saying, God, I trust you. It came from you, and I trust you that when I give this to you, when I give this back to you, that you are going to provide for me. And that's really the third thing that you're saying as well, isn't it? I don't just rely on myself. This is an act of faith. This is a step of obedience that says, I trust that God is going to provide for me because I'm not relying on just myself. That's a hard thing for us to do, especially like men like myself. I want to provide. I feel like I'm the one providing. I'm the one doing the work. But the truth of the matter is I can only do what the Lord allows me to do. God is the one who is in control. And so when I give to Him, I am trusting that He's going to provide for me in the future, and that I'm under the understanding I'm not the one really providing. I'm a tool. I'm used by the Lord, and the Lord provides for me. And so what I'm stating is I cannot rely on myself solely, but Lord, I'm relying on you to take care of me and to bring the increase. And then the last thing that I would tell you about a tithe is that it puts God first. It's the first fruits. And so what you're saying is, God, I put you first before anything else. I don't wait until the end and give Him the last of the crop. No, I give Him the first of the crop, trusting that He's going to provide, and demonstrating that I don't rely on solely on myself, but I'm demonstrating I trust the Lord, and the Lord is the one who is providing. Do we understand what I'm saying there? When I give to the Lord, then what I'm doing is putting Him first before everything else. So when you tithe, you're saying, because if I make 100, I'm going to pull the first $10 out and I'm going to give it to God. That means, God, I put you above all of this money that I've made. I put you above all the things that I need. I put you first, and I trust you first. And that's why the Lord would say, He loves a cheerful giver. If you're going to give and you're going to say, oh, this hurts, this makes me mad, this makes me angry, I don't want to have to give this, then friend, keep it. The Lord's not making you. But if you will give to Him, then He promises that He will bless you. And friend, I can tell you this from personal experience. You will never outgive God. You will never give to Him in a way that He does not return that to you. He provides for us. It's a step of faith and a step of obedience to tithe to Him. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow as we get into the rest of Deuteronomy chapter 26. I'll see you then.